If in the process of your weaving you miss an over one and under one step, it's going to become instantly obvious because you'll have two lines of weaving that are right next to each other. And if that happens, then it's just time to back out of your weaving until you find your mistake, and then go back to where you started. And again, you'll notice that I'm angling the broom so that the weaving pulls towards the initial binding, and that's making the basket weaving binding as tight as you can possibly get it. Where to stop on the weaving of the basket binding? Well, I like to stop weaving the basket binding just a little bit past where our finished binding is on the broom corn underneath. So we're going to go just a little bit past where the binding is. And we're just about there. I find that making the traditional besoms is a very satisfying handcraft. It's a lot like basket making in a lot of ways. It's got its own cadence, it's got its own characteristic sounds, it's got its own smells. And the broom corn and the basket reed all come together to make a extremely durable and long-lasting product. Okay, that's as far as I'm going to weave, and my weave is consistent. And now again, we're going to put 3 wraps on, and then we're going to add a tool we're going to talk about for a second at 3 wraps. So there's 2. And again, I'm spacing them very tightly right next to each other. And there's 3. Before you get to this point, when we start, make a loop of twine that's about 6 or 8 inches in diameter. And that loop of twine is going to be the tool that we use to put in the final binding on the broom. So with the knot to the outside, we're going to lay a loop of this underneath the last wrap on the broom. And again, now over the top of the 3 loops, we're going to put 3 more loops. Really tight. and I'm going to hold that with my thumb. And we're going to cut about 2 feet of lead, because this is the piece that I like to leave at the end of the process for tying charms or memory items or shells to the brooms themselves. So we're going to go over the top of that loop, down inside of it, and then we're going to give the loop that we placed underneath the wraps a quick, fast pull. We're going to give it a snap, and you really want it to snap, because if it stops, it won't go through there. You'll end up with a knot that's really difficult to get through. So the idea is put a couple fingers in there, hold the broom very tightly, and give that loop a hard snap real fast. With the 3 loops that have been put in place over the top of the previous 3 and the snap that we pulled through, we now have a finished tied broom. And that finished tied broom has really one more step, and this last step is to do the trimming and to trim the reed just past where the tying and binding is. And then, if you like, which is what I usually do, I like to put an angle cut in the Hearth Besom, and it makes it a much more effective broom. If you like the ends with the little twisties on them, there's nothing wrong with leaving them just like that, and lots of folks do, and tie them with that intent. Another thing to do whenever you're finishing the broom is kind of pull on it a little bit, and that'll take any fibers that were loose that you didn't actually catch or that were too sharp. It'll get them out of there so they don't come out later. So the next step is I'm going to use a safety knife, and with this safety knife, I'm not going to whittle away at this. The basket reed and the broom corn cuts very easily, and we're going to take 2 passes around the broom to finish the broom off. And the first pass is I'm going to use, and I'm left-handed, so this will be with your opposite hands if you're right-handed, is I'm going to use the edge of the blade with the safety knife, and I'm going to carefully, with my thumb over the top of the edge of the safety knife, I'm going to carefully work my way down into the broom corn just by rocking the blade. And the reason I want to do that is I want to be careful. I'm going to go all the way around the broom like this. I want to be careful to not cut very deeply into the bark of the limb underneath, so that I don't ruin the appearance of that natural edge of that limb that disappears into that broom. And if you whittle away at this and start slicing right off the bat, it's easy to get cut with this safety knife. Even though it's called a safety knife, it's easy to get cut if you're whittling with it. And you don't want to break the bark of your handle, because part of the charm of this broom is its rustic appearance. And the rustic appearance is that branch that you've harvested from your farm or somewhere that you like. Brought a piece of aspen back from Colorado, or a piece of driftwood from the beach, and you've decided to use that for a handle for a broom. So that's the initial cut, and you'll see that my handle isn't perfectly balanced, and as far as I'm concerned on these rustic brooms, that's perfectly okay. So now I'm going to go back that I've got the corn trimmed and the basket reed trimmed, and I'm going to put a bevel now, a very gentle bevel, and get to within about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch of the binding. A word of caution is if you hit your binding with that blade, you won't have a broom anymore. You'll have some broom corn and some loose reed and a loose stick laying around. So you want to be very careful when you're at this point, because this really is the finished cuts I'm putting just a little bit of an angle in there. And after this is dry, which will take about a week, the last thing I like to do is use a little bit of, I will use a little bit of either tung oil or lacquer to saturate the colors. And it's not so much as a preservative, it's more of a sake of just aesthetics for appearance. And the basket reed, when it's dry, kind of has a gray tone, and the tung oil or some sort of a lacquer will vary, or even linseed oil works, will saturate those colors that's in the basket reed. And part of the reason that we did this was as a matter of taste. And I'm going to go ahead and trim the base to make it an effective hearth besom. And I'm not going to try and trim the whole thing. I'm going to just do, you know, 1/8 of an inch or so at a time, and work through that with the kitchen shears. And it cuts very easily. What I found that works best for a hanger for these brooms, I like to use my hand spun, the festival hand spun that we have. But the leather twine from shoelaces works really good too. And a lot of broom makers will do a subsequent tying about 3 inches up with crossover ties. I don't do that anymore because I like the way the broom looks as it's if it's loose. I usually will make the hearth besom a little bit shorter than this. I'll have the fibers probably about 12 inches long instead of 18 inches long. And again, that's as much a matter of taste and in style as it is of right and wrong. So I don't really think with a traditional craft like this there's much right and wrong. There's more matter of doing something that you like to do and finding a method that works for you. And this is one of the crafts that you can do and demonstrate that will always guarantee you a spot at any traditional festival if you care to demonstrate and you care to be part of a community that does that. This craft will get you invited to a lot of events. So there's finished hearth besom that we can use for sweeping up the mess that we made and the wood chips that are laying around.